Good. Well, Marino, thanks so much for spending a bit of time in your very busy schedule. And congratulations on great results recently. You must be really enjoying life right now, I would guess.
I am. It's good to be back racing as much as anything after 6 very intense months of developing the Nissan Deltawing, to get back to racing in the American Le Mans Series and drive a car that I've never driven, the LMPC car, and get the win last weekend. It's been really good. You know, it's, as I say, testing and development is a fun part of racing, but it's only a part. And when you're not racing, I've pretty much been like a bear with a sore head, so I'm definitely a bit more smiley at the moment.
Not only a win, but a pole as well. And I think fastest lap in your class, is that right?
Yeah, we ticked all the boxes, so it was a perfect weekend. It was very nice.
And so far as your career goes, I would suggest that's probably as good a weekend as you've had anyone at any time, right?
Yeah, 2009 I had a couple of weekends like that, but yeah, they're very few and far between. So it's, again, in 2009 we were on a roll of a full season drive, and those results were coming. But to jump into something, first proper weekend in the car and do that, it's yeah, very, very satisfying, especially in a one-make thing where everyone's got the same equipment.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. For those not quite familiar with ALMS, can you just describe it in a few words, and why you love it, and the competitiveness of the racing?
Well, ALMS, the top classes where I competed in 07, 08, 09, they're not as, in 2010, they're not as popular at the moment, but the ALMS runs to the rules of Le Mans. So it became somewhere where people could spend a lot of money developing a car for Le Mans and then race it the rest of the year. The ACO have taken that concept and obviously done the World Championship and European Le Mans Series. The LMS, the two strongest classes at the moment, are the GT class, where you have BMW, Corvette, Ferrari, Porsche, and the LMPC car, which is a Pro-Am category of professionals like myself driving with amateurs like Rudy Jungo, who I've been driving with, a Mexican gentleman. And there's sort of 8 cars, and you know, I remember in qualifying last week I was P4, and like, okay, you're 10th off. I'm like, okay, where am I? They're like P4. I said, crikey. So it's very tight racing, and very enjoyable after years of driving cars where you have a lot of technology, to drive something where it's just nothing but you driving the car, and you, okay, a little setup, but really having to explore your and exploit your driving capabilities.
How much? I know it's difficult to quantify this, but how much downforce is there relative to power? In other words, how much do the cars move around a bit?
There's a lot less downforce than I'm used to. The prototypes I've been driving the last few years, I mean, in 07 and 08, we had the capability of bolting on, of course it's draggy, but more downforce than a Formula 1 car I had at that point. These things are very free, controlled tyre, and Michelin do a fantastic job with a controlled tyre, but the balance between the front and the rear tyre is not what I'm used to with their bespoke racing tyres. So the car moves around a lot. It has just a fairly stock Corvette engine, so it's got this big heavy V8 behind you. Doesn't make a lot of noise, just a big, very torquey, so very easy to destroy the tyres quite quickly. It's a very interesting challenge, definitely. And another, I got paid one of the biggest compliments ever the other day by a journalist who said, you know, you're kind of turning into a bit of a Mario Andretti, jumping in all these different cars and being able to compete. And man, I've just been smiling about that one since. Types of cars.
Marino, the number of race suits behind you there kind of says it all. It's an interesting time for your career right now, because obviously you're driving very well, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on how well you are driving and how much potential perhaps you still have as a race driver. And I wonder whether you're tempted, given the success of your brother, even to look at moving into single-seaters over there.
I think driving-wise, I'm learning a lot still, as you always do. I think the day that you think you're not learning, you should definitely be giving up. I try to make the most of every opportunity I have. I've only done 3 full seasons of racing since 2001. I've driven a lot of different cars, a lot of bits here and there. I've been fortunate to have a lot of good teams and a lot of success in that time. So I feel that I'm getting all the tools and all the experience I need, so when I have an opportunity to be with a factory team again and to be racing for the overall win at Le Mans, I'm more than ready for it.
Right.
And that's the main goal for me. In IndyCar single-seaters, as much as I'm intrigued to drive these cars and to experience them, it doesn't excite me like winning Le Mans does. That's it for me. You know, Le Mans is my Indy 500, my Monaco Grand Prix. It's since I was a child and seeing Derek Bell and Jackie X winning. I remember '87 very vividly as a child, looking at the Rothmans Porsche and thinking, right, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to achieve, and nothing has ever really swayed me from that.
Well, speaking of Le Mans, of course, you did Le Mans this year in the Deltawing. First question, what does it feel like to drive? What's that front end feel like?
I mean, you look at it and you're like, well, how does this thing work? How's it going to work? And then I spoke to the engineers and designers, Ben Bowlby and Dan Gurney and all these guys, and I said, okay, these guys know what they're talking about. It's going to work. How's it going to work? Once you're in it, it's just a racing car. It's a different type of, I guess maybe it's like you drive an F1 car in a Bridgestone and you jump onto a Pirelli, or you drive a, you know, we used to have the cars with the 2-meter rear wings and then you go to the 1.8-meter rear wing. It's just a different type of prototype. My main thing was, how's it going to turn? And straight away, driving out of the pits, first lap, I'm moving around, I'm thinking, wow, this is really, that turns too well, the steering is effective. But the thing that's great about it is the downforce, because it's got huge, massive tunnels on it. It only weighs 500 kilos. And 2 laps into the car's life, there was a corner in this track in California we're at, and they're like, okay, when everything's right, maybe in 2 or 3 days, new tyres, low fuel, we can go flat through there. And the 3rd lap, we were flat through there, pulling sort of 3.9G, I think it was, or 3.5G. And that's the thing, is the numbers this car can pull. The diff, they were talking about having to use a vector diff to help the car turn. That was not required because the car works well without it. But the diff itself, we couldn't make it reliable. So we ran at Le Mans. That performance we achieved at Le Mans was with an open diff, and the car doesn't brake. You know, it locks inside wheel when braking. Acceleration, you're spinning up one wheel. So if you think about the performance we left on the table, to give you numbers, braking with the diff in the car, at testing, I couldn't believe this. I said to the boys, this feels like it's braking really well. We were pulling 3.9G braking. Yeah. And then without the diff, we were down to, I think, 1.6. So there's a huge amount of performance in the Nissan Deltawing. But, yeah, there's a lot of questions left to be answered on where the future of this car is, and if there is a future for it in sports cars.
Well, let's hope there is, and that's part of the character of sports cars now. With so many one-make championships and single-seaters, I think many motor racing fans are really starting to breathe easily when they see anything approaching a Le Mans car or a World Endurance car. Marino, just going back to the actual car, though, you talked about the amount of downforce it has, but is there an element also of that very narrow track and the mechanical grip at the front on slow corners? What does that feel like, actually, when you're on a very tight corner and you're just using that front end?
It rotates ridiculously well. Again, we had to slow the steering down. It has no power steering because they thought the steering was going to be light. Well, at first, we had to take caster out of the car because you couldn't physically turn it. You go into a corner and you would turn, and that you were there, and you were, no matter what happened, the car would start to straighten itself. So we had to adjust the front geometry to allow for that. But in the slow corners, it just rotates beautifully. Just really rotates, and you can get on the power. You're on the power very early compared to, I think with 75% rear weight distribution, you don't have that transitional stage in the corner. You don't turn, wait, and then, okay, I'm on the rear, I can get on the throttle now. You just turn and you're there and you can go.
Yeah. Talking to you is a little bit like talking to Jody Scheckter just before he drove the 6-wheel Tyrrell, and the sort of questions that were coming up then about the car and his reactions after he drove it. It was just another race car. Very similar feel to the whole conversation.
Yeah, people talk about the 6-wheel Tyrrell. The thing is, watching the 6-wheel Tyrrell, I remember testing and watching my teammate Michael Crum, and he'd say, I hadn't watched anyone drive it, I'd done all the testing up to that point, and he said, it just looks so crazy on track. And I went to watch him, and he came towards me first time, I'm like, okay, and he turns, and watching the car go through the corner, everything you're used to, all your brain just cannot compute what you're seeing. It's really, I think that's why people love seeing the car. even someone that knows it works was standing on the outside going, "Ooh, that looks a bit weird."
Oh, and one of the things I love about it is the whole Gurney Eagle influence as well. Justin Gurney at AAR in Sandarana, the same race shop from which the Eagles came in the 60s. And I can imagine the enthusiasm of Dan and Justin as that car hit the road.
It was, for me, as a student of the sport, as someone that loves the history, Dan Gurney's a big hero of mine. To get to, first of all, spend a couple of weeks at the shop just hanging out and going through and looking at all the pictures and talking with Dan, getting a champagne shaking lesson with the original. And as you say, just their enthusiasm. Interesting, a gentleman that works there who's 92. I can't remember his proper name, but anyway, call him Remy.
It was Phil Remington, yeah. As mechanic, he actually helped build Dan that 66 Eagle. He
did. Now, Remy's been there. He still works 40 hours a week. And the dead pedal in our Nissan Deltawing, I watched him be given the drawing, and I watched him build it. And he didn't measure anything. By eye, he welded this up, he drilled the holes, and it didn't need a bit of adjustment. And he was the man who made the bubble for the GT42. We were out testing, and Dan was squeezed up in the car and couldn't move his head. So Remy went and stole a street sign, dug out some sand, put the street sign in, beat it out to make the bubble, and then put it on the car. So
brilliant stuff, folklore stuff, and Remy just the same as he was back in the 60s, as you say. And that car, of course, that GT40 was the car that went on to win the 67 Le Mans 24 hours at Dan sharing with AJ Foyt. Let's hope, Marino, that you get that same opportunity in a car that competitive, that nice, and you can get your own outright victory at Le Mans. You deserve it, and your driving is heading in that direction, no question about that.
I hope so. That's we were very close this year with Peugeot of having that opportunity. So hopefully that's something that will come again in the near future.
Well, safe travels. You're off. Tell us about your next race.
Road America this weekend, which is just an amazing track, very fast, just up north of Milwaukee. So off there, and a few other interesting bits and pieces coming for the second half of the year. So watch this space.
Well, we will, and we'll catch up with you back end of the year. Look forward to that. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thanks, Peter.